I should have known something was wrong when Natalie greeted me at the door with that radiant smile, the kind she usually reserved for Instagram photos and her mother's credit card statements. "Evan, baby, I have the most amazing news." She practically bounced on her designer sneakers, the ones that cost more than my monthly parking spot. "I finally did it. I quit my job today." I froze in the doorway, laptop bag still slung over my shoulder, trying to process what she'd just said. "You, what? I quit! I'm free!" She spun around our overpriced Boston apartment like she was auditioning for a wellness commercial. No more corporate toxicity, no more masculine energy crushing my spirit. I'm finally going to pursue my true calling. I set my bag down carefully, the way you might handle a bomb. "Natalie, we talked about this. We agreed you'd wait until..." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Until when? Until I'm passed inside like all those other marketing zombies? She flipped her perfectly highlighted hair. I refuse to sacrifice my authentic self for a paycheck anymore. The irony wasn't lost on me. Her authentic self seemed to require about $4,000 a month in maintenance costs. "Okay," I said slowly. "What exactly is this true calling?" Her eyes lit up like she'd been waiting for this question her entire life. "I'm going to be a spiritual wellness coach. I'm going to help women break free from the patriarchal chains that bind them to unfulfilling careers." I blinked. "Since when do you know anything about spiritual wellness?" "Since I started my journey of self-discovery, obviously." She pulled out her phone and started scrolling through what looked like a vision board app. "Look, I've already designed my brand. Authentic Living with Natalie. Isn't it perfect?" I looked at the screen. Comic Sans font, lots of crystals, a photo of her in yoga pants she'd never actually worn to yoga. "Nat, this is..." I searched for words that wouldn't start World War III. "This is a big decision. Maybe we should have discussed it first?" Her smile faltered. "Discussed it? Evan, I don't need permission to follow my dreams." "No, but you might need permission to spend our rent money on crystals and meditation retreats." The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. "Excuse me?" "I'm just saying, spiritual wellness coaching isn't exactly known for its steady income stream, especially not at first." Natalie crossed her arms. "So you're saying you don't believe in me?" Here we go. The trap I'd walked into 100 times before. Say yes, and I'm enabling financial irresponsibility. Say no, and I'm an unsupportive dream crusher. "I believe in you," I said carefully. "I just think maybe we should have a plan. A budget. Some kind of timeline for when this wellness coaching thing might start paying the bills." "A timeline?" She laughed, but not in a good way. "Evan, you can't put a timeline on spiritual growth. That's exactly the kind of toxic masculine thinking that's destroying our society." I was pretty sure wanting to pay rent wasn't toxic masculinity, but I'd learned not to argue with Natalie when she started throwing around her therapy buzzwords. "Look, I'm not trying to crush your dreams. I'm just trying to understand how we're going to afford this apartment when your half of the expenses just disappeared." She waved her hand dismissively. "The universe will provide." "The universe doesn't pay our landlord, Nat. I do." "God, you're so negative. This is exactly why I need to get away from corporate energy." She grabbed her purse. "I'm going to Jenna's. She actually supports my growth." Of course she was going to Jenna's. Jenna, who sold essential oils and claimed her cat was psychic. Jenna, who hadn't paid for her own dinner in 3 years, but somehow always had money for sage bundles and tarot card readings. "Natalie, wait." But she was already gone, leaving me alone with the sudden realization that my wife had just voluntarily made us a one-income household without consulting me. In Boston, where a decent apartment cost more than most people's cars. I sank onto our overpriced couch and pulled out my phone to check our bank account. The joint checking showed her last paycheck had already been deposited and was mostly gone. Spa day yesterday. Organic juice cleanse delivery. Something called chakra alignment session for $250. My phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Staying at Jenna's tonight. Need space to process your negativity. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "We need to talk about the budget tomorrow." Her response came immediately. "Money is just energy, Evan. Your scarcity mindset is blocking our abundance." I turned off my phone and poured myself a beer. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a little voice was whispering that this was just the beginning, that my wife had just declared war on our financial stability and called it self-actualization. The voice was right. 3 days later, Natalie returned with a folder full of printouts and the determined expression of someone who'd spent 72 hours being validated by people who thought crystals could cure cancer. "I've done the math," she announced, spreading papers across our kitchen table like she was planning a military campaign. "I need $4,200 a month for my coaching certification, studio space rental, and essential business expenses." I choked on my coffee. "4,000 what now?" "It's an investment in our future, Evan." She pointed to a spreadsheet that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd never heard of realistic budgeting. "Once I'm established, I'll be making 6 figures easy. Spiritual wellness is a billion-dollar industry." I scanned her business plan. Monthly massage therapy, $600. Networking lunches, $800. Wardrobe budget, $700. Something called energy clearing sessions, $400. "Natalie, this isn't a business plan. This is a spa membership with extra steps." Her face hardened. "I should have known you wouldn't understand. You're stuck in the old paradigm where success means selling your soul to corporate masters." "The old paradigm where success means actually making money?" "Money isn't everything, Evan. Tell that to our landlord." She slammed her hand on the table. "This is exactly the problem. You're so obsessed with money that you can't see the bigger picture. I'm trying to build something meaningful here." "With my paycheck." "Our paycheck. We're married, remember? What's yours is mine." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "And what's yours is yours, apparently." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means you quit your job without asking me. You're demanding $4,000 a month for what looks like an expensive hobby, and somehow I'm the bad guy for questioning it." Natalie's eyes filled with tears, the kind that appeared whenever she wasn't getting her way. "I can't believe you're being so unsupportive. Jenna said you'd probably react like this." "Oh, did she? What other marriage advice did Jenna give you?" "She said men like you are intimidated by women who know their worth." "Men like me?" "Controlling, financially abusive, threatened by female empowerment." The words hit like a slap. Financially abusive? For wanting to know how we're going to pay rent? "You're trying to control my choices with money. That's literally the definition of financial abuse." I stared at her, wondering when my wife had been replaced by a walking Pinterest quote. "Natalie, I work 50 hours a week as a software engineer. I make good money, but not fund your spiritual journey indefinitely money, especially not in Boston. So get a better job." "I have a good job. The problem isn't my income. The problem is that you want to spend money we don't have on a business that doesn't exist yet." She gathered up her papers with dramatic flair. "I should have known you'd try to sabotage my dreams. This is exactly why women need to become financially independent." "Then become financially independent. Start your coaching business. Just don't expect me to bankroll it while you figure out if you actually want to work." "I am working. Spiritual growth is work. Spiritual growth doesn't pay the electric bill." We stared at each other across the kitchen table, and I realized we'd crossed some kind of line. The woman I'd married 2 years ago, ambitious, funny, occasionally reasonable, had been replaced by someone who spoke exclusively in therapy. Speak and thought budgets were a form of oppression. "Fine," she said finally. I'll show you how wrong you are. I'll build my business, and when I'm successful, I'll remember how little faith you had in me." She stormed off to the bedroom, leaving me with her spreadsheet and a growing sense of dread. I looked at the numbers again. $4,200 a month, on top of our existing expenses, for the indefinite future. My phone buzzed with a bank alert. Natalie had just charged $2,800 to our joint credit card. The description read, "Wellness Warrior Certification Intensive, Level 1. I called the bank and canceled the card. I knew it would cause a nuclear explosion, but I was past caring. If my wife wanted to declare financial independence, she could start by using her own credit. The screaming started about an hour later. "You did what?" Natalie's voice could have shattered windows. She stood in our living room holding her declined credit card like it was evidence of war crimes. "I canceled the joint card," I said calmly. "You can use your own card for your business expenses." "My own card? Evan, I don't have my own card anymore. I canceled it when I quit my job because I didn't need the credit limit." "Of course she did. Then I guess you'll need to get a new one." "With what income? You can't get a credit card without a job." "Exactly my point." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "I cannot believe you're doing this to me." "I'm not doing anything to you. I'm protecting us from going into debt to fund your spiritual journey." "It's not just a spiritual journey, it's my career." "Prove it." "What?" "Prove it's a career. Show me one person who's made a living as a spiritual wellness coach without having rich parents or a spouse funding them." Natalie's face went through several colors before settling on red. "You're being deliberately obtuse. Just because you can't see beyond your limited worldview doesn't mean successful coaches don't exist." "Name one." "Oprah." "Oprah's a billionaire media mogul who happens to talk about spirituality. That's not the same thing." "You know what? I don't have to justify my calling to you." She grabbed her phone and started recording. "This is exactly the kind of financial abuse I was talking about. My own husband is trying to control me by cutting off my access to money. Our money, that I earn to pay our bills." She kept recording. "He's literally admitting that he thinks he controls our finances because he has a job and I don't." I realized she was planning to post this to her Instagram followers, who already thought I was some kind of dream-crushing villain based on her previous posts about breaking free from limiting relationships. "Turn off the camera, Natalie." "No, people need to see what financial abuse looks like." "Financial abuse is not the same thing as having a budget," says the abuser. Something snapped inside me. 2 years of walking on eggshells, 2 years of being the bad guy every time I questioned her spending, 2 years of working my ass off while she complained that having a job was beneath her spiritual evolution. "You want to see financial abuse?" I stood up. "Financial abuse would be me hiding money from you, or preventing you from working, or controlling every dollar you spend. What I'm doing is called being responsible, something you might want to try." "How dare you?" "No, how dare you?" The words came out louder than I'd intended. "How dare you quit your job without discussing it, demand $4,000 a month for what amounts to an expensive hobby, and then call me abusive when I point out that we can't afford it?" She was still recording, eyes wide like she'd captured something perfect for her victim narrative. "Get a job, Natalie, any job. Prove to me that you're serious about contributing to this household, and we can talk about funding your coaching dreams. I shouldn't have to prove anything to you. You're right. You don't. Just like I don't have to pay for your self-discovery journey." I walked toward the bedroom, then turned back. "And if you post that video, if you try to make me look like some kind of controlling monster because I won't fund your quarter-life crisis, we're going to have a much bigger problem. Are you threatening me? I'm telling you that I won't be married to someone who lies about me on social media for sympathy points." I closed the bedroom door and sat on the bed, hands shaking with anger, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Fear, maybe. Fear that my marriage was over, and I was just now realizing it. Through the door, I could hear her on the phone with Jenna, voice high and dramatic. He cut off my credit card, can you believe it? He's trying to control me financially. No, I know, it's textbook abuse. Of course I got it on video. 20 minutes later, she was gone again. This time, she took 2 suitcases. My phone started buzzing with notifications. She'd posted the video to her Instagram story with the caption, "When your partner shows you who they really are, believe them." Financial abuse. Toxic masculinity. Spiritual warrior. I watched myself on her phone screen, red-faced and angry, telling her to get a job. Without context, it looked pretty bad, like exactly the kind of thing a controlling husband would say. The comments were already pouring in. Girl, run. This is not okay. He's literally admitting he thinks he owns you. Financial abuse is real abuse. Document everything. You deserve so much better than this toxic energy. I turned off my phone and opened a beer. Then another one. Somewhere between beer 3 and 4, I realized that my wife had just declared war on me, and she was fighting dirty. The next morning brought a hangover and a text from my best friend Chris. Dude, what the hell is going on? Jenna's been posting about you on Facebook all night. I groaned and opened Facebook, which I'd barely used since college. Jenna had shared Natalie's video with her own commentary. This is why women need to be financially independent. Look how quickly men show their true colors when we try to follow our dreams. Praying for my sister Natalie during this difficult time. The post had been shared 47 times. Chris called while I was staring at the comments. Please tell me there's more to this story, he said without preamble. There's definitely more to this story. Because right now it looks like you're financially abusing your wife for wanting to start a business. I filled him in on the details. The sudden job quitting, the $4,000 monthly budget, the credit card charge I'd canceled. Chris listened without interrupting, which was one of the reasons he'd been my best friend since college. Jesus, he said when I finished. She really quit her job without telling you? Came home and announced it like she'd won the lottery. And this spiritual coaching thing, is that even a real career? I mean, I'm sure some people make money at it, but Natalie's never shown any interest in spirituality beyond buying expensive candles and complaining that her chakras are blocked. Her chakras are blocked? Apparently that's why she can't find fulfillment in traditional employment. Chris was quiet for a moment. Evan, I hate to say this, but this sounds like a midlife crisis. She's 32. Quarter-life crisis? Third-life crisis? I don't know what to call it, but people don't usually blow up their entire lives unless something else is going on. Something cold settled in my stomach. What do you mean, something else? I mean, when's the last time you guys were actually happy? Like, genuinely happy? Not just posting happy photos on Instagram? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I don't know. Maybe 6 months ago? Before she started going to that new gym. What new gym? Some boutique place in Back Bay, fitness and wellness center. She goes there like 4 times a week now. For someone who just discovered spiritual wellness, she's gotten really into physical fitness too. The cold feeling spread. Chris, what are you getting at? I'm not getting at anything. I'm just saying that people don't usually make huge life changes in isolation. There's usually a catalyst. After we hung up, I sat in my empty apartment trying to remember when things had started changing. Natalie had always been high maintenance, but she'd also been fun, ambitious. We used to laugh together, plan trips together, talk about buying a house someday. When had she stopped talking about our future and started talking about her journey? My phone rang. Natalie's mother. Evan, honey, what on earth is going on? Natalie called me crying about financial abuse and divorce lawyers. Lydia Chen had never particularly liked me, but she'd always been fair. She was also the only person who could occasionally talk sense into her daughter. Hi, Lydia. It's complicated. Uncomplicate it for me. I gave her the same rundown I'd given Chris. Unlike Chris, Lydia interrupted frequently with questions and what sounded like disgusted sighs. $4,000 a month? She said when I got to that part. For what, exactly? Spiritual wellness coaching certification and related expenses. Related expenses like what? Massages, networking lunches, energy clearing sessions. There was a long pause. Energy clearing sessions. That's what the budget said. Evan, honey, I love my daughter, but she's lost her damn mind. Coming from Lydia, this was equivalent to a declaration of war against her own child. She says I'm being financially abusive for not supporting her dreams. Her dreams of spending your money on nonsense while contributing nothing to the household. That's one way to put it. It's the only way to put it. Evan, I raised that girl to work for what she wants, not to expect some man to fund her fantasies. I don't know where this spiritual princess act is coming from, but it's not how I raised her. She's staying with Jenna indefinitely, apparently. Lydia snorted. Jenna, that girl couldn't manage her own finances if her life depended on it. She's been mooching off friends and family for years while pretending to run a business selling snake oil. Essential oils. Same thing. Listen, Evan, I'm going to talk to Natalie. This has gone far enough. I don't think she's in a mood to listen to reason right now. Then I'll make her listen. She's my daughter, but that doesn't mean I'm going to watch her destroy her marriage over some midlife crisis nonsense. After Lydia hung up, I felt marginally better. At least one person in Natalie's family was still sane. That feeling lasted about 2 hours, until I got a call from our landlord. Mr. Rowe, this is Jim Dugan. We need to talk about your rent situation. My blood pressure spiked. Is there a problem with this month's payment? Well, that's what I'm calling about. Your wife came by this morning wanting to discuss splitting the lease. Says you two are separating and she needs to know what her portion of the rent would be if she stayed in the apartment. She wants to keep the apartment? That's what she said. Problem is, she also said she's currently unemployed and would need a few months to get her business off the ground before she could start paying rent. I closed my eyes. She wants to live in our apartment rent-free while I move out and keep paying for it. That's about the size of it, yes. I told her that's not how leases work, but she seemed to think you'd be willing to cover her portion as part of the separation agreement. There is no separation agreement. Well, that's between you two, but I need to know what's happening with the lease. Both your names are on it, which means you're both responsible for the full amount if the other person defaults. I understand. Can I call you back? I need to figure out what's going on. Sure thing. But Evan, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen this exact situation before. My advice? Don't let her stick you with the bill for an apartment she's living in while you're sleeping on someone's couch. It never ends well. I hung up and immediately called Natalie. It went straight to voicemail. Nat, we need to talk about the apartment situation. Call me back. She didn't call back. But an hour later, I got a text. My lawyer says I don't have to discuss anything with you without legal representation present. Her lawyer. She'd gotten a lawyer. I stared at the text for a long time, trying to process the fact that my wife of 2 years had apparently decided to end our marriage rather than get a job. Then I called a lawyer of my own. The showdown happened at Jenna's apartment, which looked exactly like what you'd expect from someone who sold essential oils for a living. Crystals everywhere, motivational quotes on the walls, and a smell that was either abundance and prosperity or delusion and bankruptcy. I couldn't tell the difference. Natalie had agreed to meet only because her lawyer had advised her to try mediation before filing for separation. She sat on Jenna's couch like she was holding court, surrounded by what I could only describe as her spiritual support team. Jenna, another woman I didn't recognize who kept taking notes, and someone who introduced herself as Natalie's life coach and energy healer. I sat across from them feeling like I'd stumbled into a wellness cult intervention. Before we start, said the note-taking woman, I want to establish some ground rules. This is a safe space for Natalie to express her truth without being attacked or invalidated. And I am? I'm Rebecca, Natalie's advocate. I specialize in helping women navigate financially abusive relationships. Financially abusive relationships. Yes. Natalie has shared her story with our support group, and we're here to ensure she feels empowered to speak her truth. I looked at my wife, who was avoiding eye contact. Natalie, is this really necessary? We're married. We should be able to talk to each other without a panel of strangers mediating. They're not strangers, she said quietly. They're my support system, the people who actually believe in me. I believe in you. I just don't believe in spending $4,000 a month on a business plan that looks like a spa membership. Rebecca held up her hand. That's exactly the kind of dismissive language we're here to address. Natalie's business plan is valid and well-researched. Have you seen her business plan? I've reviewed her vision board and her financial projections. Her financial projections that require me to pay all our living expenses while she spends $4,000 a month on massages and networking lunches. Evan, Natalie said, finally looking at me, you're doing it again. You're reducing my professional development to frivolous spending. Because that's what it is. Natalie, you've never expressed any interest in spirituality or wellness coaching before 6 months ago. You don't have any training, any clients, any business plan beyond the universe will provide. You quit your job without discussing it with me and then demanded I fund your quarter-life crisis. Quarter-life crisis? Jenna spoke up for the first time. Evan, what Natalie is doing takes incredible courage. She's breaking free from societal conditioning that tells women they have to sacrifice their authentic selves for financial security. Financial security like paying rent and buying groceries? Money is just energy, said the life coach. When you're aligned with your purpose, abundance flows naturally. I stared at her. Abundance doesn't pay the electric bill. That's scarcity mindset talking, Rebecca added. You're projecting your own financial fears onto Natalie's journey. My financial fears? I'm the only one in this room with a job. Evan, please, Natalie said. You're proving their point. This is exactly the kind of aggressive, controlling behavior they warned me about. Controlling behavior? I asked you not to spend money we don't have on a business that doesn't exist. It does exist. I have a website, I have business cards, I have a vision. You have a Wix template and some cards you ordered online. That's not a business. That's a hobby with delusions of grandeur. The room went silent. Natalie's eyes filled with tears, and I realized I'd just crossed a line I couldn't uncross. There it is, Rebecca said quietly. The mask is off. This is who he really is, Natalie. This is how he really sees you in your dreams. That's not... I started, but Natalie cut me off. No, she's right. You think I'm delusional. You think my dreams are stupid and worthless. I think your dreams are expensive and poorly planned. There's a difference. Is there? Because it sounds like you think I'm an idiot who doesn't know the difference between a business and a hobby. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and realized that somewhere in the last 6 months, she'd become a stranger. The woman I'd married had been ambitious and driven, but she'd also been practical. She'd understood that dreams required work and planning and sacrifice. This woman expected the universe to pay her bills. Natalie, I said carefully, I don't think you're an idiot. I think you're having some kind of crisis, and you've surrounded yourself with people who are encouraging you to make destructive decisions. Destructive decisions like following my passion. Destructive decisions like quitting your job without a backup plan, demanding your husband fund your spiritual journey, and hiring a lawyer when he asks you to contribute to the household expenses. I hired a lawyer because you're trying to control me. I'm trying to keep us from going bankrupt. We're not going bankrupt. You make plenty of money. I make enough money to support our current lifestyle with 2 incomes. I don't make enough money to support our current lifestyle plus your $4,000 monthly spiritual awakening. Jenna leaned forward. Evan, what you're not understanding is that Natalie's work is valuable even if it doesn't immediately generate income. She's doing important healing work. On who? She doesn't have any clients. She's doing healing work on herself. Personal growth is work. Personal growth doesn't pay rent. God, you're obsessed with money, Natalie said. It's like you can't see value in anything that doesn't have a dollar sign attached to it. I can see value in lots of things that don't make money. Hobbies, personal growth, spiritual exploration. But I can't afford to pay for them at $4,000 a month while you contribute nothing to our household. I contribute plenty. I manage our social calendar, I maintain our home, I provide emotional support. You post on Instagram and complain about your chakras. That's not the same thing as contributing to household expenses. The silence that followed was deafening. Natalie stared at me like I'd slapped her. I can't believe I married someone so spiritually bankrupt, she said finally. And I can't believe I married someone who thinks spiritual bankruptcy is worse than actual bankruptcy. Rebecca stood up. I think we've heard enough. Natalie, you don't have to subject yourself to this kind of verbal abuse. Verbal abuse? I'm having a conversation with my wife about our finances. You're attacking her character and dismissing her dreams? That's emotional abuse. I'm pointing out that dreams require planning and sacrifice, not just vision boards and good intentions. Natalie, Jenna said, you don't have to listen to this. You have options. My wife looked around the room at her support team, then back at me. You're right. I do have options. She stood up. Evan, I want you out of the apartment by the end of the week. I'm keeping it. With what money? That's not your problem anymore. Actually, it is my problem. Both our names are on the lease. Then we'll figure it out through our lawyers. I stood up too. Fine. But Natalie, when your spiritual support team here gets tired of funding your journey, when the universe fails to pay your rent, when reality comes calling, don't expect me to bail you out. I wouldn't dream of it. I walked toward the door, then turned back. And ladies, when you're done enabling her financial suicide, maybe you could encourage her to develop some actual job skills. The wellness industry is full of people with vision boards and business cards. It's pretty short on people who can actually pay their bills. I left them there in their crystal-scented echo chamber, planning Natalie's path to enlightened poverty. It was the last time I tried to reason with any of them. 6 months later, I was living in a decent one-bedroom across town. Natalie was 3 months behind on rent and facing eviction, and her spiritual support team had mysteriously disappeared when she started asking for loans. The universe, it turned out, was not a reliable source of income. I'd kept tabs on the situation through our landlord, who'd been calling me regularly since my name was still on the lease. Natalie had managed to pay the first month's rent using money she'd borrowed from her mother, but after that, the well had run dry. Lydia had cut her off after discovering that her business expenses included daily spa treatments and a lease on a BMW she couldn't afford. Jenna had stopped returning her calls around month 3 when Natalie had asked for a $2,000 loan to attend a quantum wealth manifestation retreat in Sedona. Rebecca the advocate had vanished entirely after Natalie couldn't pay for her consulting services. Even the life coach had moved on to clients who could actually afford to pay for energy healing sessions. But the real kicker came when I discovered what had really triggered Natalie's spiritual awakening. His name was Trey Callahan, and he was a personal trainer at that boutique gym where Natalie had been spending all her time. 37 years old, divorced, with an Instagram account full of shirtless selfies and motivational quotes about living your truth and breaking free from limiting beliefs. I found out about him through Chris, who'd heard about him through his girlfriend, who went to the same gym. Apparently, Trey specialized in helping spiritually awakened women align their physical and emotional energy through intensive one-on-one training sessions for $200 an hour. It all made sense now. The sudden interest in wellness and spirituality, the expensive gym membership, the conviction that her corporate job was crushing her authentic self. She hadn't discovered her calling. She'd discovered a man who told her everything she wanted to hear while charging her premium rates for the privilege. And when she'd run out of her own money, she'd decided I should pay for her personal training sessions disguised as spiritual coaching. The revelation should have made me angry. Instead, it made me calm. Coldly, calculatingly calm. I started making some calls. First, I called our landlord. "Jim, it's Evan Rowe. I need to discuss removing my name from the lease." "Thank God. I was hoping you'd call. Your wife is 3 months behind, and I'm starting eviction proceedings next week. What would it take for me to get released from the lease obligation?" "Honestly, at this point, nothing. She's clearly not going to pay, and I just want her out. If you can get her to sign a lease termination agreement, I'll release you from any further obligation." "Even the back rent she owes?" "Even the back rent. I'd rather cut my losses and get a tenant who can actually pay." Next, I called a private investigator. Not for anything dramatic. I just wanted documentation of Natalie's living situation and spending habits for the divorce proceedings that were inevitably coming. What I got was better than I'd hoped for. Trey, it turned out, had quite a history. 3 complaints filed with the state licensing board for inappropriate conduct with clients, a bankruptcy from 2 years ago, and a current investigation by the IRS for unreported income from his spiritual coaching business. He was also married, still married, to a woman named Sandra who had no idea her husband was running a side business helping spiritually awakened women find their authentic selves. I sat in my apartment that night, looking at the private investigator's report, and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Satisfaction. Natalie had blown up our marriage for a con man who was cheating on his own wife while scamming vulnerable women out of their money. She'd called me financially abusive while literally being financially abused by someone who saw her coming from a mile away. The irony was perfect. I made copies of everything and put together a package, photos of Trey with multiple clients in compromising positions, documentation of his unreported income, evidence of his ongoing marriage, and a detailed breakdown of how much money Natalie had spent on his services over the past 6 months. Then I sent it to 3 people, Sandra Callahan, the IRS investigator already looking into Trey's business, and Natalie herself. The package to Natalie included a note. "The universe provides, but apparently it provides con artists and cheating husbands. Hope your authentic self is enjoying the spiritual journey." I also sent copies to Jenna, Rebecca, and the life coach, along with a note asking if they'd known about Trey's background when they'd encouraged Natalie to follow her dreams. The fallout was spectacular. Sandra Callahan showed up at the gym and confronted Trey in front of all his clients, screaming about his spiritual whore students and his fake guru bullshit. Someone recorded it and posted it to Instagram, where it went viral in the local fitness community. The IRS moved quickly on their investigation, freezing Trey's assets and shutting down his business while they audited his books. Turned out he owed about $40,000 in back taxes and penalties. The state licensing board suspended his personal training certification pending a full investigation into his conduct. And Natalie finally got her spiritual awakening. She called me crying at 2 a.m, 3 days after the packages were delivered. "Evan, I'm so sorry. I was so stupid. I didn't know. I thought he really cared about me." "He cared about your money, Nat, just like all the other people who were encouraging your spiritual journey." "I know that now. God, I'm such an idiot. I threw away everything for a man who was scamming me." "You threw away everything because you wanted someone to tell you that you were special and that normal rules didn't apply to you. Trey was just the messenger. Is there any chance we could try again? I could get a job. I could pay you back." I looked around my quiet, affordable apartment. No crystals, no vision boards, no one demanding that I fund their journey of self-discovery. "No, Natalie, there's not. Please, Evan, I made a mistake, but we're married. We took vows. You broke those vows when you chose your spiritual journey over our partnership. You broke them when you called me abusive for wanting a budget. You broke them when you hired a lawyer instead of getting a job. I was confused. I was having some kind of breakdown, and those people took advantage of me. Those people told you what you wanted to hear, that you were too special for ordinary life, too evolved for regular work, too spiritually advanced for financial responsibility, and you ate it up because it meant you didn't have to be an adult anymore. She was sobbing now. I know you're right, but I love you. I want to fix this. You can't fix this, Natalie. You can't undo 6 months of calling me controlling and abusive because I wouldn't enable your fantasy. You can't take back hiring a lawyer to try to stick me with the bills for your spiritual awakening, and you sure as hell can't take back choosing another man over your husband and calling it personal growth. I never chose him over you. You spent our money on private sessions with him while refusing to get a job. You moved out of our apartment to avoid having an adult conversation about our finances. You surrounded yourself with people who told you I was the problem for not wanting to fund your affair. The word hung in the air between us. It wasn't an affair, she said quietly. What would you call it? I don't know. I was lost. I was looking for something, and he made me feel like I was worth something. You were worth something. You were worth enough for me to work 50 hours a week to support us while you figured out what you wanted to do with your life. But that wasn't enough for you. You needed someone to tell you that you were a spiritual warrior and a goddess and too good for ordinary life. I'm sorry. I know you are. But sorry doesn't pay the 3 months of back rent you owe. Sorry doesn't undo the damage you did to my reputation when you accused me of financial abuse on social media. And sorry doesn't change the fact that you chose to trust strangers over your husband when it came to the most important decisions in your life. I could hear her crying, and part of me felt bad for her. She'd been vulnerable and confused, and people had taken advantage of that. But she'd also been selfish and entitled and willing to destroy our marriage rather than admit she was wrong. The landlord is evicting you next week, I said. I've arranged to have my name removed from the lease, so you're on your own for the back rent. I suggest you call your mother. My mother won't even talk to me anymore. Then I suggest you get a job, any job. Even spiritually bankrupt work pays better than spiritual coaching with no clients. Evan, please. Goodbye, Natalie. I hope you find what you're looking for, but you're not going to find it at my expense anymore. I hung up and turned off my phone. 3 weeks later, the divorce papers were signed. Natalie had moved back in with her parents and gotten a job at a marketing firm, not her old job, but a similar one that paid about half what she'd been making before her spiritual journey. Jenna had stopped selling essential oils and was working at a coffee shop. Rebecca had quietly removed all references to financial abuse advocacy from her website. The life coach had moved to Florida. And Trey Callahan was facing federal tax evasion charges and a messy divorce from his wife, who was seeking half of everything he'd hidden from the IRS. I ran into Natalie once, about a year later, at a grocery store near her parents' house. She looked tired but healthier somehow, less ethereal, more grounded. Hi, Evan. Hi, Nat. We stood there for a moment, not sure what to say. I heard you're engaged, she said finally. Yeah, Sarah's a good woman. She's a nurse. Very practical. Natalie smiled sadly. That's good. You deserve someone practical. How are you doing? Better. Working. Paying my own bills. Turns out I'm pretty good at marketing when I actually show up and do the work. I always knew you were smart. You just got lost for a while. I got selfish, she corrected. I wanted someone to take care of me while I played pretend adult. That wasn't fair to you. It was the first time she'd taken real responsibility for what had happened. We both made mistakes, I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. No, Evan. I made mistakes. You just refused to enable them. I understand that now. She started to walk away, then turned back. For what it's worth, I'm glad you didn't let me drag you down with me. You're a good man. You deserved better than what I was offering, I watched her walk away, pushing her cart full of generic groceries and practical choices. 6 months later, I married Sarah in a small ceremony at her parents' house. No crystals, no vision boards, no talk of spiritual journeys or authentic selves. Just two people who loved each other and wanted to build something real together. We've been married 3 years now. Sarah works nights at the hospital. I work days at the software company. We have a budget, a savings account, and a 5-year plan to buy a house. We take turns cooking dinner and doing laundry and paying bills. It's ordinary. It's practical. It's everything Natalie thought was beneath her. And it's the happiest I've ever been.